The condition is really crazy condition.
And that shouldn't give away the whole secret to professional windsurfing.
Matteo Iachino giving Antoine Elbow a run for his money. Here we go. What a finish.
The guy is kind of talking bullshit.
The team's just got to work a little harder.
Welcome to the Windsurfing Podcast, back again for episode 20. And you know what that means? That means we've got another legend this week. Now, this guy was named in Josh Angulo's top 5 windsurfers as all time. He got very, very close to being PBA world champion. He has won the Aloha Classic. He was an absolute indoor machine. We chat to him about all of that. We talk to him about the 80s. He tells us about competing in life and his love for road bikes. We also talk to him about present day 2020 and how windsurfing has gone crazy because he is an agent in the UK for Duotone and Fanatic. You know who it is yet? Well, it is, of course, Mr. Nik Baker.
Nick, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good, mate. Yeah, and you?
Yeah. Just a little worse background than usual. Sorry for that. Thank you for doing this. You've been mentioned multiple times on our little show, you know, either as inspiration or whichever role. So definitely appreciate you coming on.
Some good stuff, I hope. Not all bad.
No, nothing bad so far. Let's try to dig some dirt now. Let's see if it goes. But first of all, how's kind of pandemic life treating you? You're back in the UK.
You know what? It's been, for me, my family, to be honest with you, we are very lucky. You know, I sort of nearly feel a bit guilty that it's gone so well, in the sense that I actually quite enjoyed the 2 months that we were locked down. Business was scary, that's for sure. We had no idea what was going to happen. It was the beginning of the season, and we had huge amount of pre-orders coming in, a huge amount of equipment coming into Baltimore to the warehouse, and nobody really wanted it. So we didn't know how long it was going to last, and what was, same for everybody else. So that side of it was daunting, that's for sure, and for many people, and still is for many, unfortunately. For us, we sort of got behind the scenes and did a lot of work within the sort of Baltimore group, and with our brand managers and the big bosses, and everyone put their heads together and worked out these plans. And so we worked really hard, and the guys did an incredible job, to be honest, which for some reason gave me quite a bit of confidence, which Baltimore guys are actually very good at that. Personally, I was pretty calm. Actually, going into it, I was sort of 97, 98 kilos. Spent the last 4 or 5 years working a lot and not going on the water anywhere near as much. And if I do, for short times, and just, get my head in the business. And I've been so busy, and it's been growing and growing, doing really quite well, and enjoying that side of it, and slacked off, if I'm like, in the keeping myself fit and healthy, and getting on the water enough. And Christmas time, I made a bit of a promise to myself, New Year's, funny enough, that would change for this year. So still work hard, but I needed to play hard a bit more too, and get fitter and healthier so that I could play hard, rather than go sailing for 20 minutes and have to lie on the beach for 20 minutes to, catch my breath. I made a bit of a promise to myself that I would do that. And I started already prior to lockdown to, go on the water every day, even if it was for half an hour, 45 minutes. I was going on the water nearly every day, all winter, from to the New Year's on. And come down to lockdown, I'm like, oh, damn. I've been winging it for the last few weeks before lockdown, and heard about it, and was worried it was going to happen to us in the UK. And obviously it did. And we were lucky enough that we were able to go out on bikes. So you could go, walking or bike riding. I'm not particularly great runner, so I thought I used to do a lot of road cycling, and dusted my trusty road bike down, and I did hundreds of miles in those few months, and literally ate at home, cooked at home, obviously, because you couldn't go anywhere. and worked, had my kids, and to be honest, we had beautiful weather. So yeah, I sort of got my head into this thing, and I lost 10 kilos in 2 months, which was amazing. So once we opened up again and the wind came back in, I was on the water every day, working obviously to build the business back, and with my dealers and obviously with Baltimore. But by that point, I was in a really good place, if I'm honest. And yeah, it sort of steamrolled from there, and it's been a busy old year. Still busy, to be honest with you. September was our busiest month we've ever had for us, which is quite amazing. And the UK growth that we've done turnover-wise has grown more than any other country in the world. And yeah, so we've got some great products. The guys have worked hard behind the scenes. And so, yeah, I've had a mad, busy year. I've literally feels like I have not stopped. So, yeah, I'm thankful for that, because I'll tell you what, there's lots of people that have not been in that same situation. So, yeah, I'm certainly thankful for that situation to be in, that's for sure.
Is it safe to say, because talking around the industry with people, but I've never actually talked to someone, or I've never had here someone that directly deals with selling, is it safe to say that actually after the lockdown, like selling like board sports or water sports gear just completely spiked, and it's been absolutely amazing
across the board? Different paddleboarding obviously took off for us in the UK, and I think worldwide took off first, because a huge percentage of the population were at home. They weren't allowed to go to work, or they were working from home. They had more time. In the UK, we had this furlough scheme, where the government were paying, I think, up to 80% of your salary, but you stayed at home. You didn't go to work. You didn't work from home. You didn't go to work. They were paying that. You couldn't if you're in certain industries. So those guys were getting paid 80% of their salary, and had a beautiful summer with incredible amount of wind on and off, either beautiful sunny weather with no wind, or pretty sunny weather with wind. And I mean, 4-2 weather, wing weather, everything, kite weather, obviously, and obviously amazing paddleboard weather. So couple that with bike riding. I know some people in the bike industry, and they've had, like us, it's been the busiest year they've ever had. My dealers have had the busiest years they've ever had. Some of them have been in the industry for a very long time, 30 odd years. And so, yeah, it was, our industry, it's not a big industry. It would struggle, I believe, if we didn't have this, I suppose, situation for us that allowed us to get out in the water, allowed our dealers to clear their stocks in a way, keep turning over product. Our margins aren't massive in our sports. We all do it because we love the sports. We've been in it all our lives, most of us. We're all still actively on the water in one sport or another, or all the sports, to be honest, a lot of people. So yeah, I think it was very fortunate for our industry that it balanced towards us and favoured us this last 5 or 6 months. And I can only hope that that continues in one way or another. I think winter for everybody could be tricky. Ski season, that will be tricky, obviously. And winter, obviously, the flus are bad as well. So the way our country works, they're going to blame everything on COVID. You know what I mean? You trip over in a street and that's a COVID issue, and they'll put that down for their numbers, But I don't know, it's a tricky thing. But I just hope come season next year, things will look better for, not just for our sports, for the rest of the world, to get other people out in jobs and businesses and keeps them going. I know the pubs and clubs and restaurants, that side of in the industries have really had a hard time. So yeah, I feel for those guys. But yeah, it's been tough, but for us, we're very fortunate. It's been actually quite amazing.
Yeah. You mentioned staying in the sport and being still passionate about it and being on the water every day. And maybe that's a little bit of a personal question also from my side. Like, all of us, we love it. We do it because we love it. And then you want to probably, some of us want to stay in the sport one way or the other. But when you were competing, living in Maui, living that sort of Hollywood lifestyle that we're gonna get into, did you ever imagine, like, okay, I'm gonna go back to the UK and sell gear?
You know what? I didn't. I didn't imagine anything. If I'm really honest with you, I didn't think of anything other than waking up in the morning, going for a bike ride, having breakfast, going to the gym, having something else to eat, going to the beach, or going to see Kai maybe at the loft, or Mark Nelson maybe at the time, you know, the board factory, then go to the beach, test, train, and that sort of thing day after day, and where we were going to travel to for the next competition. And that's sort of all I thought. I mean, to be honest with you, totally frank with you, had I thought what I was going to do when I retired and thought about that more grown-uply, more professionally, probably, more maturely, actually, I probably might not be here selling product, you know. I mean, I could have retired like many of the other guys, but unfortunately I didn't. Well, I say unfortunately, I actually love my life. I can't complain. It's amazing. I work with a great bunch of guys. All the dealers I work with are really cool. To be able to go windsurfing pretty much whenever I want.
But
I run my own business. The guys I work with here at Baltimore, incredible. They live their lives like we do. But I don't live in Maui. You know, I lived with Jason Polakow for most of my life, 15, 16 years in Hawaii. We lived together. Obviously, he retired in a different scenario than I did. He lives in Maui, cruises, bike rides, bit of windsurfing, keeps himself super fit and healthy. He's really into that stuff. And so, yeah, and other people have done the same, So, yeah, different things relative. Look at Robby Naish on the other end of the scale. Could have retired many years ago, but loves it. He loves his time in the water. He also loves the business side as well. And so, he's involved in all the different angles. So, yeah, I could have done things differently. Couldn't we all? But I would say, considering I didn't consider my future extremely well, like some did, as frustrating it was probably my first 4 or 5 years. I'm pretty much over that, sorted that now. I live my life. I live on the beach. I got 2 kids, 11 and 14, which are awesome fun. My family's here, friends here. I grew up with all my friends around here, of course. They all windsurf, a lot of them. So, yeah, I can't, I certainly can't complain. Be nice if I still had a house in Maui that I could go and whatnot. But if I want to cruise over there and go and see Jason and the boys, I can still do that. So, yeah, I just, I'm quite when I get into something, I get quite obsessed is probably the right word, to be honest with you.
Single-minded is the word.
Quite single-minded, yeah. So I do struggle, with thinking of other things, like I should take a holiday a bit more often, to be honest with you. And Craig, I know from facts, always go, Nick, you're working hard. Go on a holiday, go away for a week. You can still do a bit of work when you're away, but you need some time away sometimes. And I struggle to let go, I'm a bit controlling, maybe.
Yeah. But I think it's probably safe to say that if you were a little bit more mature, maybe you wouldn't be as single-minded back then and so focused on the contests. And so it's always, I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I've always had this fear, and I still have it, if I'm honest. I still have this fear that I will not be good enough. So with my windsurfing, I had the fear that I wouldn't do very well in my next competition. So-and-so would beat me, or I would go down the rankings and I'd lose my sponsors and whatever. And that really drove me. Yeah. For better or for worse, you could say it's probably not the best, the healthiest way to do it, but, that is what drove me. And I'm sure many competitors it actually drives as well. But, I loved everything I did with it, that's for sure. But same as I come back now, what I do now is competing to me. I need to see my turnover. I want to sell more boards. I want to do better demos. It's all competing. As far as I'm concerned, it's just for a different thing.
Yeah.
So
you call up Ross Williams sometimes, who's the agent for G8. Hey, Ross, what's your number this month?
Yeah, tell me. Oh, I've beaten you. No, Ross is a good guy, actually. I mean, it's quite a friendly rivalry, of course. Yeah, but we have obviously when I started doing this, I had to compete with Whitey, so there's other guys that do a great job, of course, but, Dave's a bit ferocious, isn't he, when it comes to anything in his life, So to be honest with you, I've lived with Jason, who is about the most competitive human being I've met on the planet for those years, that's for sure, you know. And then when I come back, and Whitey's like, you know, he's competitive. So we had some, it pushed me big time to up my game, and at the demos and the events and things. So yeah, it was, it's good, man. It's a good life, to be honest with you. I can't complain.
I know that you do pretty much a perfect Polakow impersonation. Can you give it to us?
God, I've not done Jason for a long time. I haven't seen Jason for, God, what is it now? 6 years, 5, 6, 7 years. Spoke to him the other day, a few weeks ago. He injured himself again, you know, a little bit, and usual sort of story. But he's back on the water sailing and doing his mad stuff. But he was always a bit quite a different character now, I think. But in the day, he was impatient, to say the least. You know, we always used to say only child syndrome, you know, because he had no patience for anything else or anybody else. It needs to be done now. You know, I come to this, come on, we've got to go here, we've got to get it. Everything's all in sort of a bit of a rush
There it
with
is.
him. But yeah.
There it is.
No, he's an amazing guy. Actually, he's he's like like one of my brother from another mother.
Yeah. Let's go full circle back though. You grew up in Brighton, if my Googling is correct. And when when I think of Brighton, I think of the PBA days, and I think of this huge fucking shore break. Like, is that like what you get every day when you were a teenager, or?
Sort of. I mean, Brighton is 5 or 6 miles basically east from where I live in Shoreham Beach, on Shoreham. So that's sort of 5 or 6 miles. The further that way you go, the worse it gets. The further west you go, only for a period of time, you know, we go to a place that's 4 or 5 miles that way, actually where my office is, and the shore break is much less. We used to call it, when I was young, Wimpy Worthing, because the guys were, the shore break, we're going to Worthing. Oh, you're going to Wimpy Worthing just because of the shore break, you know. But I lived on the beach, so we just sailed out the front of my house, basically, whatever the conditions were. Windy, no wind, shore break, flat, high, low tide. We just largely, anyway, sailed there the whole time and got used to it, you know, with obviously with the guys around me that were here. Danny Seals, you know, the late Danny Seals, as we know, was my best mate for years and years. And we'd go out in the most horrendous shore break, you know. And obviously we got trashed quite a few times, as you can imagine, and got spat up the beach and dragged each other out, and my brother as well at times. But Jamie Hawkins too, you know, used to come down and sail with us the same. And then you watch when we had the contest here in Brighton at high tide, no one else could get in and out. Like literally everyone, beyond Anders, everyone that came got smashed up the beach at least once. Whereas we could launch, go out, wrong stuff, come in, change your kit, go back out again. And people couldn't understand why, but to us it was sort of normal, you know. But it is tricky. The real steep angle of the beach and that churning, it sucks and keeps your gear in. Once it's in it, you can't get it out. So yeah, Brighton's gnarly. We don't really sail Brighton much, you know, because the wind sort of backs off the buildings a bit. But down here, it's still pretty gnarly at times. But generally, we don't sail actually at high tide, most people. But
yeah, if nobody's seen it, if anybody hasn't seen it, YouTube and search Brighton PBA. There's a clip, like it's the most evil type shore break. Like, yeah,
the beginning of one of those contests. The beginning of the video from one of those contests was literally like it was a black screen and like a little hole, and that hole was opening up, and as it slowly opened, you could see that, oh, hang on, it's a human, it's a person. I was walking, and you can sort of see them slow from the side, walking as the screen was opening up, and you know that this circle was opening up, and all of a sudden you realise, oh, it's a guy's in a wetsuit. Oh, hang on, he's got water dripping from his nose, and as it pans out, you see slow-mo, he's trying to run up the beach, and then he looks behind, just gets nailed by this wave coming up the beach. Oh, it's brilliant. Absolutely the greatest opening from a video. Yeah.
It's not a coincidence you're from, I mean, it must have played a big part having contests there kind of early in your career, you know, being seen, promoting yourself. Basically, you know, it was racing right over there mostly.
Yeah.
And somehow being maybe not the biggest guy, you've managed to have early success in racing. What kind of role, did it play, this whole Brighton PBA thing? And is it like the circus arrives to your home place, and then you end up seeing like, I'm actually quite good? Or was it already, you were already out there on tour?
Yeah, I was already out on tour by this point. That was, I think, late 80s. Really late 80s, I started really on tour. And then Brighton was, I think, 94, 95, 96, or 95, 96, 97, around mid-90s, basically. So I'd been on tour already and won some certain events and things. And I think by that point I was, well inside the top 10, top 5 at things at times. Yeah. So, yeah, it was obviously lovely to have an event, not just in England, but basically where I live. I mean, that's incredible. So it puts a lot of pressure on you, incredible amount of media, which is also, nice, I suppose, great for the sport, great for the city of Brighton as well. But yeah, I mean, I had some great racing there, some stuff where I won some course slalom stuff. I won every single race. I had some horrendously stressful stuff where I sort of could have won an event, lost it to Scott Fenton, actually, where supposedly I went windward side of the start boat. And I sort of got around in a slalom race.
In a slalom, even.
Coming in towards the beach, no one had video of it, no proof of it. But the start boat said I went windward side, which, you do a bit of racing with an anchor on 5-2 weather.
Yeah.
Unless you were 50 yards, 80 yards upwind, which would be pretty hard to get that wrong. I've done enough racing in my life, but anyway, couldn't protest it, so that got thrown out, so I got kicked out of that final. And Scott won it, who's obviously a very good friend of mine at the time, who was living with me, and that was, obviously stoked for him to win it, but that was stressful when it's at your home event, even more so,
Yeah.
We had some good racing here, and it was good. Shame we've never had any good wave events here, because down in Cornwall we get some pretty good wave conditions, but that's life.
Yeah, so you mentioned late 80s, early 90s, you get on tour. And what kind of tour is it? Do you get to the back part of the golden era, the Hollywood type lifestyle? Well, when I started my first events, I can remember going with a friend of mine called Nik Baker, who was on the British tour with me. What were we, 16, 17, I think just 17 maybe. And we went to Tarifa. Knew nothing about it. Neither of us ever been to Tarifa before, both the same age. I think we had about 150 quid each with us. Got in the aeroplane, got to whatever airport we went to, I can't remember at the time, had to get a taxi and find one that would take our gear. And we gave him an address of a campsite. We turn up an hour or so later at the campsite, basically paid him half of our money each, and then put this tent up. We had no idea, it's pitch black, 1 o'clock in the morning, put this tent up, rested our gear against the tent. So if someone stole it, we thought we might hear it. No chance, we were dead asleep anyway. Woke up in the morning, it's hot and sweaty, and went looking for the PWA or PBA at the time contest site. I had to ask people. We had to walk about 2 miles up the beach, 3 miles up the beach, but we found it, spoke to the guys, and everyone's obviously friendly, and someone came and got our kit, took it up there, and we used to hitch each day to get to the race site. So that was sort of our first experience. I remember I had some Henio custom boards that kept breaking and falling to bits, and we were repairing them, these cracks in these boards, with this like car body repair filler stuff, not realizing that they were epoxy and we were using polyester stuff, and it was melting the inside. Yeah.
We were pretty green at that point. But yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And in those days, they paid prize money in cash. Like literally suitcases full of cash. Unfortunately, I didn't get a whole suitcase at that point. I think I was 14th, I think it was. Beyond had come over. I think he just won an event in maybe San Francisco or whatever, and he's on his sort of 19 or what he would have 20 maybe. And he was really on his rise, just about to win his sort of main world titles. So watching him was incredible, and racing around with him, and sort of help and support actually from a lot of the guys on tour, which, to be honest with you, for me was amazing. I remember it was, they were so welcoming, the guys on tour. I got really friendly with a couple of guys that started similar times to me, Vida Jensen and and that sort of Norwegian crew there. They were friends with Bjorn and Britt Dunkerbeck, and we became, quite quickly, friends with those guys too, which was quite amazing for a young couple of guys coming from England, and stepping into this big wide world of competing and traveling and whatnot. So yeah, we got a lot of support from all that sort of guys. We just loved it. I mean, we lived hand to mouth in a way. Fortunately, in those days, they made the prize money was cash, which is quite handy because halfway through most contests, we'd run out of money. So we were like waiting for the free dinner night, eating as much as we could and stuff like that, and lunches on tour was free in those days, a lot of it. So yeah, we were sort of fortunate in a way, but at the end of the event, the last day we'd be looking at it going, right, what position are we at? And we had a rule book so we could work out the percentage of prize money we would make. And we'd be like, okay, between us, we could get our equipment back to the airport maybe, or, equipment back home, or get to the next event. And yeah, we sort of lived our life like that, I suppose, for a good couple of years. And we went back to Maui a few times, and when we were sort of 17, 18, and that was, I suppose, the big highlight for me. I did quite well, relatively well, I should say, fairly early on. And I remember the guys who ran the Aloha Classic invited me in Lanzarote after a super session. I'd got second to Bjorn in Fuerteventura and in Lanzarote during the slalom event. We had really good wave conditions and had a super session, and I got noticed, and Paul Eamon gave me an invite for the Aloha Classic when I was 18, I think it was. And actually it was Jason Polakow's first year on at the event, and we did the what do you call it? The event, the qualifying event to get into the main event. That's what we got invited to. And yeah, and we did that, and I got to the finals with Jason, and actually he beat me in the finals, annoyingly, but he was pretty good in those days. Well, still is. And yeah, we both got up to the main event. And I can't remember even what result I got now, but just to qualify for the Aloha Classic, in Hawaii with all these guys was, incredible, absolutely amazing experience, amazing feeling. And, fun enough to qualify with Jason. And, I think even the following event after that, the O'Neill, he actually won, I think it was his effectively second main event, which was quite amazing. Yeah, and it just snowballed from there. I remember living in Jason Pry's, had some old workshops over the back of a house that he rented, and they turned them into some bunks, and we had between me and Danny Seals actually went, and we had these little bunk beds in this little wooden shack room, and cockroaches and a lot, but didn't matter. We ate potato wedges for 25 cents on the Minute Mart, and just spent literally every waking hour on the beach, in the water, blisters all over our hands, and and stayed there as long as we could until all the money ran out. Then we went back home, and I was fortunate. I had a little bit of support, or a lot of support from my family, from my parents, and my dad gave me the opportunity to, I suppose, to test out and try out my passion. He could see I trained and worked hard at it, and he was able to give me the opportunity to try, and I believe I made a pretty good job of it, I would say. I certainly tried hard, that's for sure.
Yeah. But was it obvious from the start that you go there and like the top guys are making bank, and like if you get any good, you can probably live out of it like comfortably and well. And when you were as a kid, did you have expectations of the tour, and did it strike you like, okay, these guys are, kind of living a rock star type life? Because this is what we hear, this is what our generation hear from your generation, that it was like little Hollywood.
Well, when we started the first few years, I didn't have any expectations other than I wanted to go windsurfing around the world. Best places in the world was one thing. I think as much of that passion was to go and be on the water and sailing and competing with the likes of Robby Naish, Bjorn Dunkerbeck, Roberto Itiel. There's a list of all these people I could be here days talking about that I looked up to, admired, watched all the videos, looked in every magazine, and I just had this incredible desire to be amongst that, to be a part of that. The money never came into it, and if I'm honest, the money never came into it, even when I earned money, and quite a lot of money in those days. You know, we earned a lot of money, I suppose, and it still wasn't the driving force for me. I just loved it. For some reason, I found this incredible passion for it, and I'd sacrifice pretty much everything to achieve what I wanted to achieve. You know, that goal of being a world champion and competing with the likes of, like I say, Robby, Bjorn, and all these sort of guys on the water, and Jason. I suppose when I started, you know, Jason was obviously kicking off as well. He kicked in really quickly. I mean, incredible wave sailor, and he changed the face of wave sailing, if you like. The boards we rode, the equipment we used, as Bjorn did for slalom and racing. You know, Jason did that for I would say for waves, absolutely. You know, so yeah, it was just that drive, that passion. I loved it. I loved all the people around it, and it wasn't until, I suppose, what was I, early 20s, late to early 20s, I think it was, when I actually signed up for, funny enough, for Fanatic. My second time, when I was young, my first sponsors were Fanatic and ART, actually, through the UK importer. And then went a few other ways, and then I think I was early 2021, something like that. I signed up for Fanatic and ART with Monty and Monty Spindler, and Marco Capella was making the boards for us. We had a massive facility in the south of France, which was like a Formula One facility. I mean, really quite incredible. I mean, the budget we had in those days on equipment was probably more money than most people have in total budget and total sponsorship now for the top guys. You know, I mean, it was quite immense. I mean, that said, we used a lot of gear. I mean, I'd go through, God, I don't even know, to be honest with you, 50, 60, 70 boards a year sometimes, to get, you know, between racing, course slalom, waves, freestyle, all the different, you know, locations, sales. I mean, yeah, incredible amount of kit we had and carried them. And being small, you know, for a racer, I was 75 kilos. I mean, I'm heavier than that now, but I wish I was 90 kilos or 88 kilos then. I mean, Christ almighty, I might have done even better. But, you know, the likes of Bjorn and Anders were a foot taller than me, and at least 15, 10 to 20 kilos, depending, heavier than I was. And I think a lot of it comes down to the harness location point with longer legs, you know, that connection point where the rig is much higher. The leverage is you know, is a lot better. So I certainly struggled with that with the racing, which meant I had to work really hard on my equipment. One, I had to be fit, but I had to work really hard on the kit, making sure the sails, the boards, the fins. I mean, I'm really finicky. 1 or 2 mil mast track, boom heights, outhauls, harness lines. I could feel it made a big difference for me. The big guys, yeah, they did some development, obviously lots of testing and whatnot, but it didn't seem that if they didn't quite have it right, they could ride through it. You know, they could get a board to ride off the fin easier. I had to have it absolutely perfectly tuned, perfectly set to get the right feeling, to have any chance to keep up with these 6'3", effectively giants. And I can remember one time, I can't remember what year it was, but we got to the last event in Silt, and it was a course slalom when it was separated, course slalom and slalom, they were separate. And the top 5 on the podium was Bjorn first, me second, Micah third, Bezainis, Anders Bingdale fourth, and Torkel Christensen fifth. So you can imagine what that looked. I mean, I literally looked like I was at school with all my school teachers. You know, they were about, you know, a foot bigger than I was and a lot heavier. So, I mean, that was an incredible achievement personally. You know, as a goal I always had. People said you wouldn't do it, and okay. I never beat Bjorn. I didn't get to world champion in that situation, but with my size and my height, in my head, that was pretty damn close. I mean, Bjorn's a bit of a fierce competitor, that's for sure, as most are. But like Robby before him, Bjorn is a little bit special. So there was some good days.
Yeah,
good
so
time.
I guess that ticks off the question: how the hell did you manage to do so well in racing and a vice world title just to prove that in course racing, you know? But then we get to waves, and Brauzinho, I think it was Brauzinho, told me here on this podcast that especially later in your career, you guys would get to the spot and he'd be like, Nik is, you know, maybe it sounds, I don't know, maybe it doesn't sound so great and so But
I know what you're going to say.
you know, like that you weren't necessarily sailing on a level, free sailing on a level that somebody would think you're gonna win, and then somehow, some way, you were making every single final. Is that the analysis? Is that what it takes to get there, and you had everything really well put in your head?
A few things. One, I was quite strong-minded. I never really let it faze me that during practice, or the few days before, the weeks before, we go to Canaries, for instance, weeks before training because of the port tack and such radical conditions, and really need to get into tune there. And the local guys are obviously shit hot, so you're really on the back foot before you've even started. So a lot of us went there quite often. How many times I went to the Canaries, and the day up to I've been there 2, 3, 4 weeks on and off, and up to the day before, I'd be thinking, shit, I'm struggling here. What am I going to do? Looking at Browsinia and Cowley and, all these other guys that were just absolutely ripping, doing insane stuff. And I think to myself, shit, if I get through my first heat, I'll be lucky. But the moment, Levi was another one. Francisco was another one, incredible free sailors. The moment the flag went up, for some reason, I switch into a different gear. I can relax. I can see things for what it is. I very rarely did things I couldn't do. So when I was out training practice, I wasn't training jumps or maneuvers just because I enjoyed doing it. I trained it because that's what I needed to do tomorrow when the contest started, whatever that move may be. And I needed to do it every time, not once, not, oh shit, that just about pulled that off. It was every time. And often, 8-minute heats in those days, on your 3-4, 3-7, sounds like a long time. One, it is a long time when you're energy, when you're going through the heats, but it's not a long time. You miss a set, the waves go a bit flat or whatever. It so often comes down to 30 seconds from the end, looking for that last wave or last jump. And for some reason, I don't really know why, if I'm honest, but for some reason, if I had to get that last wave or last jump, 9 times out of 10, it seemed like I was able to do that. And a lot of other guys, I can remember competing with Levi on many occasions, competing with Francisco and guys. And I would sit on the beach knowing that they were better sailors, knowing that if we went free sailing for an hour, most people wouldn't watch me. They'd be watching these guys because their flair, their style was incredible. Put it in a heat with me. I could sit and have a chat with them on the beach before, and I don't know why, I just felt I could relax. I'd hit my first jump in front of them or something, and I would just get those points. It's only only need to win by half a point or 1 point, and for some reason, across the board, I would just get those points, and they would do one insane move or one insane ride that might be way better than what I've done. But across the board, when you're counting 2 or 3 jumps or waves, and you add them all together, times them by what they times them by. And I would work this out before I went out. So I knew it was only 2 jumps, not 3 this session maybe, or it was the wave riding counted more or less or whatever it was. And I knew what I could do, and I worked it out before I'd even hit the water. I didn't really worry about what they were doing. I didn't think, oh shit, they've done a double. Well, I can't really do doubles. I wouldn't be then panicking going, well, I should try a double because I couldn't do them. So why try it? So I would go and I'd do something different. In those days, it was the Crazy Pete, I remember, was one. And little jumps that very few people did. Actually was a piece of cake to do when you got the technique, but it used to get me points, So I stuck with those things. Like I'd go in after the heats, read the judges' notes and see what it was, and go, okay, that worked, that didn't. So I'll work on that. I'll keep that in my repertoire, if you like. And yeah, and that was, in a way, that was not just waves. That was the same in slalom and everything. You put the flag goes up. The moment I become in this competition zone, it just clicked into place for me. And I'd love to tell you exactly why. I don't really know. I don't know if it's because in my head I had more on the line and more to lose. I have to, like I said to you before, I live with this fear, if I'm honest, of not being enough, not being good enough, not achieving what I need to achieve. I set my goals, and 9 times out of 10, I smash my goals out of the park, because I'm scared not to achieve my goal, whatever that may be. That's business, that was windsurfing, whatever it is. So, yeah, I don't know if that's why. I mean, that whole psychology, sports psychology is an incredible science, as we know. I mean, there's always one or two people in each sport across the world. Look at your Lewis Hamiltons, your Valentino Rossi's, your Michael Jordans, and, you know, all these, millions of them really, but in every sport there's sort of one, you know, over a period of time. And then that evolves to the next guy, you know, maybe, but there's sort of one guy that's your Bjorn Dunkerbeck at the time when I was on tour. At the moment, look at, you know, Formula One, obviously it's Lewis Hamilton, and motorbikes was Valentino Rossi's, now Marc Marquez, you know. It's that, okay, I was never the Valentino Rossi or your Michael Jordan, that's for sure. Definitely, that was your Bjorn, your Robby Naish, then your Bjorn, I suppose. But I was that next person back, you know, that's 1 or 2 tiers back where I could compete with those guys, occasionally beat them. But unfortunately not enough to be world champion in all these disciplines. In the indoor was different. It clicked for me because, you know what, beyond as ferocious a competitor as he was a bit big for the indoor, and he still made it work, you know, because that's the guy he is. Whereas I sort of made it work outdoors, whereas indoor, I had that competitiveness. You know, I was really quite fit at those days. The jibing, which is, you know, probably a large part of it, I had to focus on that because being small, I could jibe really quite well compared to a lot of the bigger guys. So the indoor was my thing, I suppose. That suited my size and the way I competed, which is why I won that, I think, 6 times overall, you know, world titles. That worked for me, you know, and it should work for me in the waves as well because of my size. And to some extent it did. I got second place many times, missed out on the world title by half a point. One time, the year I won the Aloha Classic, to Beyond, well, that was, as much as it was the most amazing day of my life, it was also the biggest kick in the Watsits, I can tell you that much. But, you know, I suppose that's the way it goes. In the waves, in those days, actually, the wave guys, it changed from doing all the disciplines, from doing the slalom, you know, the course racing or course slalom, and then the waves, and combining the results as well. Nearly everybody did them all. And then halfway through, 2/3 of the way through my career, it changed, and you had your Polakow and your Franciscos that just did the waves. You had guys that just did racing, and guys that just did freestyle, you know. So that sort of changed as well a lot in those days, which gave us a different outlook on it all.
Yeah, a lot of things from there that I want to ask. Probably one you touched on is your goal at some point after becoming, you know, vice world champion. I don't know, 3 times you've become it. Then probably your goal the 4th time would be to, you know, to win. You think it was just bad timing because you came up against so many of these guys that, you know, are legends now, like all throughout your career, or what was it? You mentioned the 99 Aloha Classic, if I'm correct, beating Robby Naish in the final. I mean, yeah, doesn't really get much closer than that to a world title, like you say, you know? So what do you think it was?
Well, in 95, I won the single elimination of the O'Neill. I think it was a 4-man final, me, Cisco, Dave Kalama, I think. Trying to think who the other person was, maybe Robbie or someone like that, beyond, I don't know. Yeah, I won that as well. We had 3 or 4 days going through the double elimination, and I tweaked the ligaments in my knee, just free practicing, you know, waiting for the next final for me to come up a few days later, which sort of put me on the back foot a little bit, which is, I suppose, frustrating. I ended up losing the double elimination final to Bjorn, which meant he was the first European to win, you know, Hawaiian wave event, which is, you know, a little bit frustrating, kicking the Watsits, as you could say. Then I went on from there, and whatever results. And in 99, I had the same again. I'd literally just signed up with North Sails at the time, you know, now Duotone. And Kai made me some amazing sails. And, you know, I was sort of been living in Maui for quite a while at that point. I'd actually stopped and retired from racing. I think I'd even stopped from freestyle at that point, maybe, or maybe a bit later. So I was really concentrating, obviously, on the waves. And I won the Aloha Classic single elimination, and then had I think it was a long time, because that time of year, Novemberish time, the winds comes and goes, and it longer heats, and it took days to get through the double elimination down to the last day. And I think the finals was 5-6 o'clock in the evening on the last day. If we didn't get it done, there was no double elimination result as such, I would have been champion. And I kid you not, did not sleep for about 3 days, watching them all come through, trying to do some sailing myself, obviously keep myself into the game, not wanting to hurt myself like I did 4 years before at the O'Neill. And anyway, Robbie had come through the fleet, obviously sailing good. The wind was light, long heats, 15, 20-minute heat, maybe something like that. And by the time I got up to him, I was trying to sail in between the heats, just, a wave to come back in, go back out. And I'm just trying to keep a little bit of a feel for it. But in those conditions, it was tricky, and it was, I don't know, it was around mast high, 12, 15 knots maximum. And so solid pumping surf. And he was out on what we called the coffee table, Robbie's big wide boards, and he sailed these things so well, but it had a huge float. He could drift out, and he's 5'2" or whatever. And he was on fire. And I can remember sitting on the beach. I can still remember today thinking, I cannot let this happen again. The first final, because obviously I didn't lose the first round, so I get a chance twice in the double elimination. He beat me. I just wasn't on my game. He was up in the right spot, and I was trying to learn it, trying to get it, struggling to get out. I'm on a little 20.5-inch wide board and a 5 meter, I think it was, when I first went out. Anyway, he beat me. And I remember on the beach, just literally head between my hands, just going, my God, what have I done? I can't, I've got one more chance. I've got 15 minutes to not do the same. I'm competing against my childhood hero at Hookkeeper. On the last day, it was a lot of pressure. Anyway, we went out, we left the beach, and Robbie went off upwind straight out through middles. No chance I was going there on my little board. So I had to go off out across the rocks, pump through, or get through the sort of breaking, closing out channel at times, and then spend the next literally 8-9 minutes getting upwind. And I never got to middles, and the wave sort of quite north of the swell was. So I'm watching him riding waves from middles all the way through, kicking out and going back upwind. And I'm literally just going, oh my God. And I don't know, sort of 8-10 minutes into it, I caught my first wave. It had a, top to bottom, really nice wave, I thought at the time, and I kicked out in the channel again, thought, shit, am I going to have time to catch another wave? And I was struggling, and I had to go upwind, catch some swells, tack off. And I sort of got as far up as I could go with literally a minute or so to go. And I'd had one wave. He'd had about 6. You only had to count 2. And I remember literally catching a wave, going as far up as I could, upwind, thinking I need that sort of distance so I can get more than a couple of turns, and thought to myself, this is it. Your life's on your line in my eyes. I either go down in a ball of flames, trying my hardest. I can't do I just have a turn here. It had to be all or nothing, because I wasn't going to win on a half-assed wave. And I just switched in a gear, and I had my turns. And I remember the first turn was literally a hook off the top. And I thought, and once I'd done that first turn, I just relaxed. I sort of forgot about it, and it just flowed. And I just did what I did. Literally at the end of the wave, kicked out, I didn't kick out. And I went upwind, missed the rocks to get back to the beach, got back in. Jason was there, and a few of my friends were there. Actually, Mike's wife was there, funny enough. And we're all sitting down, and Jason's going, you've done it. I went, dude, I had 2 waves. He caught 25 waves, it seemed like, He goes, yeah, but they weren't like your waves. Yours more top, explaining what was going on. And I couldn't see it in my head, when I'd watched Robbie ripping these waves up, and doing what he was doing in my head. I thought, no, I don't think that's enough. But I suppose I felt sort of relaxed in the sense that I gave it my all with what I had. That was all I could. I couldn't do any more. I felt reasonably comfortable with that. And sure enough, I was on the podium up there. And they'd had all 10 judges, the highest judges they'd taken off, the bottom judges they took off, and take the 5 middle ones. And I standing up there with my hero at Hookkeeper. And to be honest with you, when the result came through, I could have walked away and retired at that point nearly, I get sort of emotional thinking, as you see. That's my jersey behind me in the front cover of Windsurf Mag, where I was walking out the water, literally, just after my heat. And My parents got that done for me quite a long time ago, and they know what it meant to me. And my the only real trophy I suppose I've kept and I show off in a way is my Aloha Classic trophy, which is in my office front window. So there to beat the king of windsurfing, he still is the king of windsurfing, to be fair, at Hookkeeper, was absolutely okay. I didn't win a world title in the waves, but this was as close as I was going to get, as close as I did get, should I say. So that was my highlights. That same event, I remember Matt Pritchard was sailing really well, coming through the doubles, 360s and all the waves. Bjorn was, if I'm honest with you, sailing averagely, not his best. And I know that to win the world title, Bjorn had to be knocked out, not get to 5th place. And we're looking at it, and Matt's coming up to him in the ladder, and I'm thinking, no problem, Matt's going to take him down. The way Matt was sailing, honestly, he was ripping, like really was. Amazing. Bjorn went out, big 360, big air on the first wave, and I'm sitting there going, oh, shit. Matt couldn't pull off a 360, and he was doing them left, right, and centre. Every wave, every heat nearly. Didn't make one in this heat. Long story short, Bjorn walks up the beach. I'm sitting on the beach, at Hookkeeper. I'm sitting there. Bjorn walks up, looks at me, gives me a wink, and went, not this year, buddy. And I'm just thinking, cheers, mate. Thanks for that. I lost by half a point, I remember. Even though I won the Aloha, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just classic Bjorn, isn't it?
But
Bjorn, the king, in the indoor, you were the king. What was it? Would you just smash okay, for sure it was the gear, the preparation. We already talked about that. Would you just smash the time trials and then every time have have that leeward position to start that first slide into the pool, or what was it? What do you think if you break it down now?
The real early days, in fact, the first ever indoor in Paris. In fact, before that, actually, I got to try the jump ramp for the first time ever. Like one of the first guys over it in Sotavento. The Peter Stuyvesant guys brought it over there, got it in the water. I remember breaking fins on it, left, right, and centre. I've still got pictures actually in magazine from when we first tried the jump ramp. But the first time we actually competed there, or I should have competed there, we'd been to Almanar for the slalom. And we went from Almanar in a van with Danny Seals, was with me at the time, and we drove with Bjorn and Britt and Vidar and Christoph and all that to Andorra, because Bjorn had a house in Andorra, and we all went snowboarding. Now, Danny could snowboard. I'd never snowboarded, skied when I was at school once, and that was it. And we all rented snowboards and learning on the nursery slopes. Danny's like, dude, let's just go to the top. By the time you get to the bottom, you'll be a pro. I'm like, yeah, go for it, mate. Let's go for it. Stupidly. About the third turn in, broke my front binding and literally fell on my forearms and broke both forearms. Had to get sledged down the mountain, which I think was even more scary than the actual fractures. Went to the hospital, saw them x-rayed, cracked through both sides, ligaments done, bandaged, plastered and bandaged up. So that was me done for the skiing for the next few days. Then we had to drive to Paris from Andorra, and I'm having to drive with my broken arms. Danny was 16 at the time, couldn't drive. I remember driving up to Paris halfway, 2:00 in the morning, absolutely knackered. Beyond and that were on Land Rovers. They're Land Cruisers from Toyota, so they were gone because it was snowy over the mountain and they were gone. I'm in a van. Halfway up there, pull over, jump in the back, go to sleep for a bit, get woken up, thought, oh, it's cold. Look in, some guy's broken into my van, nicked my wallet, nicked my stereo, and a load of other stuff. Danny's asleep across the front 3 seats with his head against the other, with a coat over him. And I'm like, hey, went to jump up, realised I've got sore arms, fell flat on my face. Guy's gone in the car off. We're like, Danny takes his coat off. What's going on? Shut the door, dude. It's cold. I'm like, mate, we've just been broken into. Anyway, lost all the money, lost my no cards. Anyway, drove to the next gas station, filled in France. They fill up for you in these days. The guy goes, I said, fill it up. And I'm thinking to Danny, but we had these Euro checkbooks with no card. Didn't know how we were really going to pay. I thought, once it's full, what are they going to do, So I had this Euro checkbook, £30 in money. That was it. That's all we had between us. I said to the guy, fill up. He filled it up. I went to the thing. And anyway, he took my £30 and said, that's it, go. I'm like, that was lucky. Got in the car, got 50 yards up the road. They put diesel in my petrol van. So that was nice. The guy had come and picked us up in a lorry, drove us to the middle of nowhere, fixed it. I couldn't pay, so they waited till the next morning till I could get some money on my check card thing from the bank. Then we had to drive to Paris. We arrive in Paris, Beyond and Brit out the front going, dude, where are you? Because I had all their indoor stuff in my van. So anyway, they got in the indoor, everyone got in the indoor. I had to sit and watch the first year. And there's Eric Thieme, Robert was good, Manolo Barlet was really good, a little guy, really fast, you know, so I watched those guys. So that was year one, quite frustrating. But then the second year on, got a feel for it. And then the third year, I think it was on from that, then I got the right boards and sails. And it just clicked. I was always a good jiber. I had to work on jibing because obviously in the slalom, the big guys are always faster. So I had to catch up around the corners. I seemed to be pretty crap at starting too, so I was always playing catch up, it seemed. And the only place I could genuinely catch up was around the corners. And lucky in those days, we always had 5 jibe marks, so I had quite a lot of chances to catch up. And in indoor, then we did 5 times around the first mark. And I can remember training for it, and with a heart rate monitors on, and we'd be high 190s, low 200s of our heart rate. Literally no harness training, pumping, jibe, literally sort of 10, 20 pumps, jibe, 10, 20 pumps, jibe, around jibe marks, in Hawaii and Australia and New Zealand, different places when we were training over the winter for it. And it was seriously hard jack of the racing. But yeah, Robby was obviously amazing at it too, again, like myself, a bit shorter, super fit, great jiber and obviously competitive. So yeah, they were amazing days. We'd fly in from different parts of the world on a Friday, practice, qualify, Friday night session, a bit of partying afterwards, next day some more practice and more time trials, Saturday night session, a little bit more partying sometimes, or going to the VIP area, Sunday afternoon, evening session, then pack up, fly home the next day back to Maui sometimes. Yeah, I remember we'd sleep a few days by the time we got back from that, but pretty they were pretty immense. And then we obviously did them in other places. We did outdoor ones in what did we do with them in Lyon?
Milan, I think, yeah.
Yeah, in Lyon, and another one in Greece somewhere, Turkey maybe. We did another outdoor one, and it was windy, so we had the wind coming down the pool at sort of 45 degrees down. So you go flying towards a jump ramp on your 5.2, whatever it was, because it was quite windy. It's outdoors, so it had more wind, so you could use a smaller sail. And suddenly you get a gust from behind as you were trying to aim your fin up for that little slot doing 25 knots. There was a few injuries actually on that one because of that wind, made it really quite difficult. Yeah, I remember jumping out the pool, like landing a tabletop, landing by the edge of the pool and just went straight out the pool and landed on a cameraman. Yeah, they were the days.
Yeah. From what you explain or how you describe all these things, it seems like you're this really analytical kind of, like really prepared, really down to the last detail kind of guy. And is it fair to say that your image at that time was very different? I remember seeing ads, fur coat, some bling in the ear, disco ball, whatever, this kind of things, early 2000s, big sponsors, all that. Does that, is just that an image, or is that just an image, or did you have that kind of swag, a little bit? I know it's probably not the best to ask you, but everybody says, yeah, Nik was a people's champ, in the indoors and loving that kind of interaction and stuff,
I did. I loved it. I mean, it was as close to being a rock star as you're ever going to get the indoor, because you walk just the pre-show, with all the balloons on the pool and the rock music. And then in Bercy, they did some incredible, the sound quality in Bercy is one of the best in the world, I believe. But the pre-shows were literally, your arms would be tingling, your chicken skin on your arms because of what's going on. And I suppose it's as close as I would ever get to becoming a rock star. Bear in mind, I can't sing or play any instruments. So that was as close as we'd ever get to, and they'd call your name up, you go out there, we'd win big prizes, we'd do stupid stuff at the end. Robert was the master at it, jumping out the pool, and, he'd hurt himself every single event just because of this show that was going on. He just couldn't control himself, it was amazing to watch. So I did enjoy that. But again, once the flag went up, I can switch. You know, I can be this guy on the beach to a point. I mean, I'm not the goon, I'm not the daft one. I'm quite light-hearted, I think. So I loved all that side of things. But when it came to competing and the training for it, the equipment, I suppose in my eyes, I thought I was quite professional with it because I knew I had to be. I don't believe I had as much talent as Jason, probably not as Beyond, Robby, and some Josh, the Angulo boys. I mean, look at Mark and Josh, super naturally talented. Levi talented, Francisco talented, and I had talent, I believe, but I don't believe as much as those guys. I had to try hard. Phil McGain was a classic, not as talented as a lot of the guys, but over the years he worked so hard at it. Even the Pritchards, look at Matt and Kev Pritchard. Matt, I would say, possibly even more talented than Kevin. Not to say that, they're both talented, but maybe not as talented as some others at the time, but they worked very hard at it. They put the time in, used their brains, and that got them the results. And I think I had to do that. So I know over the years when I was younger, I struggled to separate that focus that I had in competition. So during the day of the competition, I couldn't see anything else in my life. I didn't have to in some ways, which was sort of handy. But I struggled a little bit with, spectators and fans and whatnot that may be at normal events. It could be in the Canaries, let's say, and people would come up and they want to chat, and I would chat, but I wouldn't be concentrated. And that's nothing to do with them, or I don't think me being a bad person, but the fact that I was really focused. From the moment my eyes woke up in the morning till I went to bed, I was focused on it. And that was sort of how I knew the only way I knew, I would say, how to do it. And that seemed to work okay for me. So I suppose I just stuck with that. It wasn't until later years I could relax a bit more, maybe when I grew up and matured a bit more. Maybe when I realized that, you can sometimes over-focus, take some things too seriously, which I think I probably did over certain times of my life. But that comes a little bit with maturity, maybe, and reality. But so I am more serious. I mean, I've got a younger brother, Anthony. I've got an older brother too, Steve. But my younger brother, Ant, who was more the other way. He was not as serious, not as focused. He liked the partying and the lifestyle more than what we were trying to achieve. I was trying to achieve a goal in results. He loved the lifestyles. He wanted to achieve results, and he got some, but in a different way to what I did. He was more relaxed, more chilled. In fact, he did better when he was relaxed and chilled. If he focused too hard like I did, it would put too much pressure on himself, so he couldn't cope with that. So he had his way of doing it, which is quite different to mine. You look at maybe the opposite end of the stick from my day, Josh Stone, who obviously was very successful with freestyle. In fact, he was most successful in PR and marketing himself. I mean, he was PR marketing world champion, absolutely. Incredible at that. And he was incredible with the spectators, with the crowd, with the team bosses, all these different people. He could work it absolutely incredibly, amazingly. And, fortunately, he did very well in freestyle. He did incredibly well. I mean, waves, he was a talented guy too, but he sort of focused those few years on freestyle and really put in an incredible job. And Irie, man, you look at Brian Talma, another marketing legend, if you like, still is in a way. And he didn't take the competing as seriously, possibly. He was a good sailor, but he loved the lifestyle and that fun side of it, traveling the world, talking with people, meeting new people. And he was a master at it. And I was probably more focused on the competing and that side of it. And I think Beyond was more that way too, which is why they called him the Terminator, because he literally wouldn't see, he could just see what he needed to do. And okay, I would say probably not quite the Beyond level. I always looked to Robby Naish because he sort of had both going. Obviously an incredibly fierce competitor, like insane. But at the same time, if someone walked up to him in the middle of just before he goes out into his heat, he could switch to this such nice, charming, funny, guy and have a nice chat with them and whatever. Well, anyway, I've got to go for my heat and then switch on again, go back to his focus, for his competing. So he had sort of both sides to it, I would say. So yeah, I mean, I didn't have quite that, that's for sure. He's quite a master at that. But yeah, I think I focus more on the competing and being concentrated on that side.
Yeah, I think anybody that's never competed doesn't understand how hard that is. So many people come to a contest and these guys are dicks, because you're in a contest, you're just like so focused. You really don't want to, interact or whatever, unless it's maybe, after the contest is done for the day or whatever. But you mentioned Josh Stone, you mentioned PR world champion. It seems like you were no slouch yourself in that department. Probably Sega comes to mind, and Sonic the Hedgehog on your sail, a massive advert. When I ask around, the boys are like, ask him what he was getting from Sega. Ask him what he was getting from Sega. So if you want to share, do. If not, no worries. My question is more like, in those days, did you guys all work with agencies and whatever, or was it just like, I don't know, you met a contact at the beach because windsurfing was so popular and then it trickled down from there or whatever? So yeah, give us a little rundown.
Yeah, for me, I was not very good at sitting in a room with a brand's boss or an outside sponsor and tell them how good I am. That was not, I've never had the confidence to do that. So I couldn't do that. Fortunately, from a young age, one of the pros in the UK, a guy called Stuart Sawyer, who I got quite friendly with very young because he had some companies, Cosmic Surf and some other things. He sponsored me and in a way mentored me a little bit in the early days. I used to go down to his house in Cornwall and my dad would drop me off there when I was young before I could drive, and we'd go sailing and surfing. He'd drive me around and really helped and supported me, a lot in those younger years. And
yeah, he ended up running the tour, in the later days.
In the later years, yeah. But prior to that, then he got me sponsors. I remember with Gull and all sorts of things. And then he started up his, SSM marketing, management as well. And he managed me for a long time, for most of my career. And like you say, at a later date, he then took on the PWA tour, which was incredibly thankful because at that point, I think the tour was in debt by 1.8 million. A guy, Christian Hurleys, I think it was, who did an incredible job prior to that. Got a bit unstuck. I'm not exactly sure why. But yeah, anyway, it got to a point where the sailors were owed huge prize money and it was incredible debt. Luckily, the SSM took it on, turned it around, made massive money for all the competitors, paid all their outstanding prize money back. And yeah, it was quite a thing. And yeah, prior to that and during those times, we had some pretty amazing sponsors, Sega obviously being one of them. That came about that Stuart knew often the way. Stuart was doing some deals, I think, or working a little bit, or knew one of the guys, a guy called Simon from Sega at the time. And he got a bit of a sponsorship deal for me. Nothing, mate. I think it was $6,000 actually for one event for in Bercy, but also got a load of them from the staff and the crew, the bosses, to come to Paris to watch the show and a VIP box and champagne and whatever else. And at the time, they were sponsoring the Williams Formula One team, which I think had Alain Prost and Damon Hill, maybe. They were winning the world title, so, big time. And they had the little sonic legs on the side of the car, so they were big time in those days.
This is how, anyway, this is just a nice moment to reminisce what kind of league windsurfing was in, I think.
It was big. It was big in those days. The prize money for the indoors were 210 to 240,000, which is pretty big money for a 2-day, 3-day event. So these guys came over, literally absolutely loved it, to the point when the VIP party things afterwards, they couldn't talk. They were screaming and shouting. We'd had this Sonic, I'd had to fly my sail to America to get the Sonic the Hedgehog stuck on, because at the time, it was a long time ago, you couldn't get that done here. So we flew these sails to America, shit in the back, cost a fortune, obviously, so that we had this Sonic. And obviously years gone by then in France, they all knew me as Sonic. They would have the banners with Sonic, over the time. And so after that event, then obviously Sega were like, shit, man, we want to be a part of this. This is amazing, this sport, So they sponsored me And in those days, they did, this is, I suppose, a job we did or what they thought of windsurfing, and a bit to do with Stuart and Simon, who were involved with Sega, you know, how they supported us. They sponsored things for 1 year, which they did Williams. 1 year, won the world title, done, got out. That was sort of their policy at the time. And I actually had 2 years with Sega in those days, which was sort of unheard of because they loved what we were doing so much. They loved being a part of it, and they carried it on for a couple of years, yeah. So that was good. Can't remember how much they paid me, but it was all right, I think. Then obviously after that, you know, we had all the big sponsors, Fanatic and ART, you know, and then I went to Mistral, I remember, Rushwind. In those days, you know, Rushwind was owned by Gastra. And the big videos, you remember the big Gastra videos, and Rushwind, we did the Spread the Word video, which was really amazing, funny movie. All the Neil Pride rigmarole, and you know, those days it was big budgets, big monies, and yeah, they were the days. And yeah, and then SSM actually took on the PWA and changed that around radically. Got big sponsors involved in that. We then had something. I always said to Stuart, I don't care what it is in a way, but I wouldn't do cigarettes or alcohol. Largely because I didn't do it myself. I never smoked. I didn't drink. I wasn't, very rarely. It wasn't my thing, and I didn't think that was the right thing to portray, if I'm honest with you, when I was younger. And I sort of stuck with that for a long time. I had different opportunities of time and said no. A bit later in my
Nobody
career,
seemed to care though at that time.
Well, at those times, it was on all Formula One. It was in every sport. But I just had this thing. I've always, you know, never agreed with the smoking side of it more than the cigarette and more than the drinking, probably, for whatever reason, one reason or another. But later on, Silk Cut, an English brand, I believe, they were looking at promoting their cigarettes, showing that it was a lower tar and a healthier version of cigarettes, if you can have one of those. And they wanted to, find a way to make it cool, if you like. People were smoking, people were drinking, God, people are doing drugs, aren't they? You can't, in a way, I can't stop that. I can not promote that, of course, and not say it's a good thing, which I never obviously did and would still to this day not say it's a good thing. But people had their version on it was people have a freedom of choice, you know, it's up to them what they want to do. So if the people that do smoke or drink or whatever, you know, those people, you know, they wanted to reach those people and promote their brand product to those people. So over time, you know, I remember Stuart working on this because they wanted a British team. They wanted an event. They wanted to, you know, or we wanted to promote windsurfing. So when Stuart first put it to me, it wasn't just, Nick, they're going to pay you a load of money to put a sticker on your sail. I knew you wouldn't do that, which I said, yeah, you're right. So they came up with a whole plan on their investment into our sport, the same as they were investing into, you know, motor racing. Silk Cut, who had Benson Hedges and whatnot at the same time, they were into Formula One, same people doing the same thing, M&C Saatchi. And they came up with a whole plan of obviously having a British team. So it was myself, my brother, and Jamie Hawkins. And they would then run it for 2 years. And they would have an event, which we had in Barbados, and possibly the second year, another event. We would see how that went. They would also market windsurfing, not just professional, but beginner windsurf and where to windsurf, all this different stuff through all the huge mainstream media in the UK. I know in those days, magazines was massive business. GQ, Loaded Mag, all the big newspapers, everything. They did the event in Barbados and spent, I mean, a lot of money, over £1 million, I think, in that 1.7 million actually, sorry, in that first year. Including obviously the event and marketing it, flying out the editors and that from all the different newspapers and magazines, all this different promotion. And it was, I mean, we've got, I think, over 30 pages in GQ magazine, how to windsurf, where to windsurf. We taught the editor and in all these other magazines. I mean, it was the biggest thing windsurfing had an investment for windsurfing, not just for me or for, you know, individuals that they'd ever seen. So at that point, it was pretty hard to say no. Obviously, they paid me a little bit of money at the time, of course. But with all that in plan, the sailors on tour benefited. obviously we benefited, windsurfing benefited. It was pretty much a win-win situation. So yeah, that happened. We went to Barbados. I actually met my wife there, or ex-wife, funny enough. But yeah, I met Michelle there, and she was one of the models for Silk Cup for the magazines and things. And yeah, I suppose the rest is history. Unfortunately, it only lasted a year, because that year, the British government, I think worldwide, a similar thing, they put the ban on advertising cigarettes, in any mainstream media, and sponsoring event, all these different things. There's a white paper, they call it. And if our contract was finalized prior to a certain date, then you could run the contract out. If it wasn't, you had to stop it at the end of that calendar year. Our contract was done 6 weeks after that date, cut-off date. So we could only run it that first year, which was, yeah, pretty gutting, really. I mean, not just personally, I think for windsurfing and for the tour a little bit as well. Even M&C Saatchi, the guys there that run it, they reckon they got so much from it. They couldn't believe it. You know, it was so beneficial. And I think it was for our sport. I don't think anybody ever held me accountable for the fact that people smoke. I've never smoked. I don't smoke, of course, never touched a drug in my life, you know. I barely drink, to be honest. So I'm about as straight as they come. So, yeah, I think that was, as far as sponsorship wise goes, that was pretty radical. But yeah, we were fortunate. We didn't just have sponsorship in those days. We had big prize money compared to today. You know, talking about the rock and roll lifestyle, you look at a lot of the guys, the Rob Ayres, the Anders of the tour. I mean, they lived like a rock and roll. I mean, Anders, we used to go to Oahu, fly to Oahu for the wave event a couple of times. We did stay in. I remember we rented this house with Bjorn and Britt and Vido and that. A $10 million house built into the cliff, overlooking Diamond Head. You know, I mean, it wasn't actually that expensive to rent, amazingly, but, you know, not what you would normally do at a contest. We all rented Mustang convertibles because we knew there's very rarely ever wind. So we sailed for about an hour a day, and the rest of the time we cruised around Honolulu, the North Shore, went to some clubs and, you know, had a bit of fun over there, as you can imagine, when you're young. And had a great old time. Rob Ayres and Anders rented Ferraris, you know, because once your kit was at the beach, you left it there. You didn't need to stay. They went off and rented a Ferrari for a week. Yeah, quite amazing, really. So, yeah, we had some fun times then, that's for sure. It's difficult now for the competitors. You know, they don't take as much kit. Admittedly, they don't do anywhere near as many events. We do 20 events a year with all our kit, but they don't have the opportunity to make the money like it was, you know, my time, and even a bit before my time, to be honest, as well, you know.
Yeah. So you mentioned the tobacco and the alcohol money kind of just being taken away by, you know, from day to day almost.
Yeah.
And then you might track, you know, this plus the custom gear and, you know, a lot of things kind of, I think, were put together to you know, to really, for the sport to shrink, you know. Do you see a way to get it to at least, you know, some sort of shape or form that it was back in the day, or do you think there's just too many things these days, you know? Because back then, windsurfing was pretty much the only water sport that was out there, correct?
Yeah, it was in the early days. Yes, it was the extreme sport. I mean, it pretty much invented extreme sports in a way. The things we were doing, I mean, surfing was cool, you know, a bit of motorbiking was cool, but we were surfing as well as jumping 30, 40 feet, riding big waves. And and you could also do that on a lake, you know, where surfing, you got to have a wave. So yeah, it was the extreme sport for a long time, you know, so everybody wanted to be a part of it. I mean, people were driving around with windsurfers on the roof of their cars. They never windsurfed, but they wanted that cool image that windsurfing gave them. I mean, it's pretty rad, really, I suppose. So, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I think it's difficult. There's so many sports. When one of the downturn, I can remember the downturn. I can remember a lot of the kids coming from Venezuela and these sort of places. And all of a sudden, people would sign, we'd be doing, you know, contracts with our sponsors for X amount of money, you know, into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know. These guys would come over, you know, your Ricardos and that sort of people, and they would sign up for a quarter of what we would. And at the time, you know, because I wasn't in the business side of it, I was just a team rider, a competitor, and, you know, we only knew what we knew. At the time, we were like, hang on, guys, if you're going to them, that was a huge amount of money where they came from. So they were signing up for what we wouldn't even think of signing up for. That was taking our, you know, our lunch money. If you like.
Ricardo blames you guys for that. He says, I wish one of the older guys sat us down and told us, look, guys, this is what a top 5 windsurfer is worth. You know, because he admitted that. Yeah. And yeah, that's interesting, because maybe we should have. Maybe that's probably would have been the right way to do it. But, you know, for him to get paid what he was getting paid coming from where he was coming from was probably what equivalent to what we were. But it still cost that much money to go around on tour, you know, and to compete and to have your equipment and all that, you know. But to be fair, obviously in hindsight, we're all clever. You look at it now, it had to happen because of, you know, well, kite surfing, for instance, came along and stole our thunder to a point. Okay, not competition wise. And they still haven't done it competition-wise because they have 2 kite tours and they compete with each other. So they just shoot each other in the foot still, it seems. Or like 5 of them.
From what I hear from the kite guys, you know. So we still have earned as much, if not more, prize money-wise. And we did for years and years and years. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky thing. You know, windsurfing shrunk as an industry. In my earlier days, you look at Gastra, we're doing over 200,000 sales a year, just one brand. Compared to what Duotone being the biggest brand in the industry now is, I can tell you now, nowhere near that, as you can imagine. Far from that. Yeah, it had to change. When it changed, maybe it was the right timing. Maybe the Ricardos and those guys, Guitos, came along in the right time for the windsurfing because it was going down and the windsurfing industry couldn't afford to pay those salaries and that sort of team riders. You know, we had in those days team riders to compete, team riders for marketing, team riders that just went on the road and did travel stories, for all sorts. Whereas now you've got to do it all. You've got to be a top competitor. You've got to be your marketing guru. You've got to do travel stories, you know, and you've got to do it all for, like, you know, whatever they're getting paid. And it is difficult. It certainly is difficult. And, you know, the guys have become, I suppose, very clever about how they travel, where they take their kit, where they stay, and all that stuff. It is different now, that's for sure, and it's tough. But they do it for the same reasons I did it and we did it. In the fact that we loved the lifestyle, we loved what we were doing, we loved going on the water to this day. You know, when I'm nearly 50 next year, I still love going on the water. When it's blowing now and it's windy, it can be onshore, it can be foiling. I love it. I'm still out on the water just because the feeling I get from going on the water, whatever type of sport, whether it's surfing, kiting, paddleboarding, windsurfing, I just love it. And I do quite a few sports. You know, I still ride motorbikes on the track and all these different stuff, you know, but it's pretty hard to beat what we do.
Yeah. The way I look at it is, you know, you're like, they ask you like, hey, so how much money you make? I'm like, it ain't football, you know, but at least we go places where the football players go for vacation, you know, where they want to actually go. But yeah, whatever. It is what it is. You mentioned, you mentioned dirt bikes. Obviously, you, Jason, the Pritchards, a lot of guys, you know, do it. You mentioned in an interview that aside from motocross, windsurfing is the only sport that really gets you going, that you really feel alive, you know? What is it?
Alive.
What is it about windsurfing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really do the motocross so much anymore because you just hurt yourself non-stop. So I ride road bikes. You know, I've got a ZX10 1000cc Kawasaki, which I ride on the track. We're actually just looking into next year doing some actual racing. We're going to do some mini twin racing, me, my brother, and a team who works for me and a few of my friends, just for a bit of fun. Cheap. It's the cheapest way to go racing and improve your riding and get that competitive buzz, I suppose. But that's the adrenaline I get riding a bike is as close as I can get windsurfing, because you're sort of in control, but you also know within a millisecond, you're down and you can hurt yourself. And that adrenaline, I sort of enjoy. I'm more cautious now than I was, obviously. I don't really ride much on the road. I've got kids and things, and that something goes wrong on the road, you're generally not coming back. Whereas on a track, you're just going to hurt yourself possibly. But so I enjoy that. I do really enjoy that. But you know what? If I had to pick a track day or a really good day windsurfing, I'm going to go windsurfing. There's nothing like it, because yes, you have your sail, your board, your mast, your boom, and all your equipment, like you do as a bike or even a tennis racket maybe, or ball in a football and whatnot. But you have the elements. I think not battling, working with the elements. It can be flat water and you're on a foil, so you're 2 foot above the water. Or it could be double mast high, whatever, triple mast height jaws and everything in between. You are working with those elements, and it's changing all the time. And I don't mean every hour, as it changes every run. Every time the wind's shifting, the water's changing, your equipment's changing in those conditions, and there's so much to think about. But at the same time, you don't think about anything. You just do what you do, and it sort of transports me from your everyday stresses and pressures and life, and whether you're having a great life or not, whatever it may be, it transports me to a different place, and I'm happy in that place, if I'm honest with you. Standing on the beach, chatting with my mates, and just watching people learn a new move, learning a new move myself, or try not to forget the moves I used to know, maybe as well. But yeah, just to know it, I just love it. I get new equipment every year, obviously, when they bring new boards out, sails, whatever. I'm still like a kid at Christmas. I can't wait to unwrap those boards, put the foot straps on. I hate putting foot straps on. I've done it so many times in my life, but I still want to do it because I'm excited about trying this new grip board out, maybe, or foil out, or wing out, or sail out, whatever it may. I mean, I was rigged up on Sunday. We got some new products coming out, for next year, and I've got a sample one of them, and I was on the beach like a little kid, rigging this thing, taking pictures, and pumping it on the beach. There's no wind, and I'm looking, and I think I've done it for over 30 years, and I'm still as excited now, pretty much as I was all those years ago. And yeah, it is my drug, I suppose. Maybe that's why I've not had to touch drugs before, but to me, it is my drug. And I think I said earlier on that I sort of not stopped by any means, but didn't do anywhere near as much time in the water, spend as much time in the water as I should have in the last 5 or 6 years, up until this year. And I think I not lost my way, but focused a bit too much on the business, kids and other things in my life that maybe weren't great. Kids great, obviously, but other things in my life have been difficult the last half a dozen years, I suppose. But since, New Year's, I set myself a new resolution and got out in the water near on every day I could. And it's like I've come back to life. I mean, it really is amazing. And windsurfing and foil wing and paddleboarding and surfing and kite surfing and all these different things certainly give that to me and many people I know.
I guess that's good news for my generation that, probably 20 years from now, we're still gonna feel that way, or 30 years or whatever it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at these guys. Look at Robby Naish, still out there, whatever it is, all the different sports. He's not afraid to, he's not one of these guys who goes, oh, I'm just a windsurfer, that's all I'm doing, that's the greatest sport in the world. All the different things. He does it to the max, absolutely loves it. And he's been doing it for a very long time, and all these different levels in the business, traveling non-stop. He just loves it, lives for it, breathes for it, beyond still now with his son, with Liam out in the water competing and things. And he's just giving him another new lease of life as well, maybe. And most of them, I mean, I think some people move on to other things. Some people move to kiting. Some people move to paddleboarding maybe, or surfing or other sports, but once you're a windsurfer, it's in you for life, that's for sure. And again, if you move to one of these other sports within our industry, maybe, whether it's surfing, kiting, or foil wing now, which is one of my new passions, that's for sure, then that's all good with me, to be honest with you. If I can see you on the water, I'm happy with that.
Yourself in 20 years, you'll be well in your 60s, still throwing little tabletops off the lip and whatever. What do you reckon?
In 20 years, I'll be nearly 70. Yeah, because I'm 50 next year.
Well, in your 60s, yeah.
well in my 60s, that's for
Trying
sure.
to be nice here.
I hope so. You know what? It's most of this and most of what we've spoken about is all up here. It all comes down to your state of mind. If you want to do it, people say, well, it comes down to your body keeping healthy. Well, that is a state of mind. If your mind wants to be healthy, if it wants to keep fit, if it wants to do the exercise, the training, eating healthy, doing all that stuff, then, that all comes from a state of mind, and I don't see why not. I mean, I'm reasonably healthy. I'm reasonably fit. I can still do 70% of what I used to do, which is, I'm pretty happy with, if I'm honest. So in another 20 years time, if I can do, 70 or 50% of what I can do now, I'll be well impressed with that, if I'm honest. So yeah, I think no reason why not. And the equipment as well, don't forget. I mean, our equipment now is amazing. I mean, if I had this kit 25 years ago, you'd be talking to a multiple wave and slalom world champion, if they didn't have it, of course. Yeah, if I was the only one with it. But yeah, so no reason why not. I think we just got to keep ourselves in a reasonable shape, body-wise, health-wise, keep our mind strong and active. And then, yeah, why not? We shall see.
Little life advice. It's a great way to end it. We do have this section that was supposed to be quick fire questions, but they ended up being pretty slow fire. So let's just go to that. Number one, what are your pet peeves?
Pet peeves. Not closing the door behind you is one, and messy people. I struggle with messy people. I really do. And I'm not like I'm the tidiest person in the world, I can tell you that much. But a reasonable level of tidiness I like. And I think that maybe because I could be naturally lazy. So if I don't know where things are and it's not organized, then I'm going to take me more time. But maybe that's just a bit of OCD, possibly. I don't know. But yeah, I don't have any major things, to be honest with you. Probably more when I was younger. Nowadays, I've done a lot of work on myself to not concern myself too much with other people's issues, if I'm honest with you. So they don't, push onto me. So other people's issues don't become my problems or issues so much anymore. So yeah, not too much, if I'm honest.
How many times a day do you pee your wetsuit?
Never. Very rarely, unless I was in my younger days. If you were stuck in your wetsuit all day at the competition in silt when it's blooming freezing, then you have no choice, because when you're cold, you just do it a little bit constantly. Whereas now, never do.
Yeah, I can accept very rarely. Never.
No, yeah, honestly,
you would have come out as a liar.
If I'd done it in the last 5 years, it would be less than 2 or 3 times.
What is your guilt?
Day in my wetsuit is the other maybe problem. If I spent 6 hours in my wetsuit on the beach, then maybe I'd have no choice then. But these days it's between 45 and 2 hours I'm in my wetsuit.
What is your guilty pleasure?
Chocolate.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, chocolate is the one thing that I had to try and stop in lockdown, because I knew it was going to get me into trouble, and I'll tell you what, it helped me that much. But yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a caffeine freak, so tea and coffee and chocolate, sort of keeps me going, because I live on that adrenaline. I have done in the past. I've tried really hard the last few years to reduce that. So now, since Christmas, I've been on decaf. So still a bit of chocolate. I'm still got a bit of a sweet tooth, and my kids have a little bit too, which doesn't help me, but yeah, chocolate.
Yeah. Your top 5 windsurfers of all time.
Oh, geez, I knew you were going to come to that one. And I said to myself, I'm not going to think about it before it happens. Otherwise, I'm going to make them up. So Robby Naish, got to be, first one. He was, since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I met him when I was 16. We rang him up Danny Seals actually rang him up because we had one of his sales we brought over from Maui from one of the gastro guys when we first ever went to Maui first time, and we rang him up. We found his number in a telephone box, telephone book in our hotel in Honolulu. Danny rang him up. I had won the Robby Naish trophy, 3 or 4 months before in the British Championship, Youth Championship, and said, look, me and Nick, we'd love to meet you. And yeah, sure, come to the Naish shop in Kailua, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning or 8 o'clock or something in the morning. And yeah, we'll catch up. We were like, oh my God. Didn't realise it took nearly 3 hours on the different buses to get to Kailua. We left about, sort of 4:30 in the morning. And met him and spent, 2 hours with him. He drove us in his Audi Quattro, I remember, to the Naish factory and showed us around. In those days, you couldn't go in there. And I'd never forgotten it, ever, how this guy, legend, busy guy, doing what he was, spent so much time with us. I can remember that was a massive thing for me. I mean, really, and for Danny, an incredible thing for us. So yeah, definitely Robby. Got to be beyond as well because of what he achieved, and someone that his size and weight in certain disciplines and conditions shouldn't have done what he did, but he did because of his state of mind and the way he approached things. Jason Polakow, about the most natural, talented human on the planet in not just windsurfing. Annoyingly, everything he did, we used to compete at everything we did at home, and he's frustratingly annoying, but incredible guy. What's that? 3? Oh God, tricky. Brauzinho. I want to say Brauzinho because, I helped sign him on to Mistral, I remember, in the early days, because I could see his talent very early on. Incredible. And to this day, we've got some great wave sailors out there competing. The stuff they do, I'm sort of glad I'm not competing at their level because it's pretty hardcore. But his power with his finesse and his skill and his jumping and his riding in all different conditions. And he hasn't been 10 times world champion, which, on his given day he could be. So I think his natural raw talent and his style, I would say he's definitely one of them for me, for sure. So the 5th one, I've got a lot. I really don't want to say a 5th one because Victor, I think, is an incredible guy. He's competing sort of like I competed in the sense that he knew what he wanted to do and did it every competition, every heat. He could do it perfectly, click his fingers, and he's worked very hard at that. He's won, who else? Angulo's. I looked up to Mark Angulo, obviously in the early days. Mark, his style and flair was, at those days, second to none. The Robby had his style. He could compete. He could win everything. But Mark had just a special style. I mean, he could do things. He still, to this day, does it in the same way. Cowley, God, great sailor. I'm missing out so many people. Levi, incredible. Francisco, God. I want to say Mark Angulo, just because of my younger days, So I've got old, new. I'm going to have to say Mark Angulo, I think, as one of my. Because he influenced me.
You said Brauzinho. Brauzinho mentioned that the one time he actually felt like he maybe overachieved a little bit or whatever. You were with him at the beach in Silt, kind of getting him through the motions and trying to help him, and it ended up with a 3-star world title. So maybe you should go on tour with him again.
Well, yeah, his first year, I remember on Mistral, and we helped develop the boards with him, and he had the talent, more talent in his little finger than I have in my whole body, I think. And plus, he's a lovely guy. I got on very well with him. He's passionate. He's emotional. A lot of those guys from that part of the world are, and I think it's taken him a bit of time to channel that. Francisco was the same. It's probably why he didn't win more world titles until he had Sanchez from MPG. Obviously channel that emotion in the right direction. But yeah, I remember being on the beach. I was so proud, like he was my son nearly, you know what I mean? Because I'd helped in a tiny, tiny way. I mean, in just a tiny way, in my own way. It was, I helped in a really small way. He did all the work. but yeah, I was stoked that he did so well. And it was when he won his first world title. I remember he was on our team, you know, at Baltimore, and people had to go. We were cutting budgets and whatnot, and for whatever reason, he was one of the guys that came up against other people, and he had another offer. And yeah, I can tell you now, I voted to keep him on board. But it wasn't to be, you know, and that's the way life is. And he went on the next year to win the title, you know. I mean, if that wasn't a kick in the what's it, I was obviously stoked for him. I mean, he deserved it, and many times I'm sure he has. But yeah, he's a good guy. He really is. Yeah, what can I say? I can remember actually a time, I've not forgotten this too, sitting on the beach in our little pods that we used to make in Gran Canaria and Pozo with all the rocks, you know, every time before the contest starts, you get your kit, you make these pods, you sit behind them for 10 days. And I can remember in warm-up, I can't remember if it was the day before or the morning of or whatnot, Brauzini coming in, literally backside, frontside 360, backside air, backside, frontside off the top, came flying in, backside, back loop, and landed planing on the wave. And this was, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe more, 20 years ago, whenever it was. And I remember sitting there watching going, oh shit, dude, I'm getting too old for this, you know? I mean, how am I going to compete against that? You know, what am I going to do? How do you compete? I mean, that's just insane at the time, you know? Okay, what they're doing now is pretty incredible. You watch Victor in Pozo. Oh my God, I watched a video of his the other night. Insane the stuff they do. But yeah, so yeah, he's. I have to put it. He's one of the newer guys that I suppose, partly because I feel like I had that little small connection with him, and I like his power. He at Hookkeeper in these places, yeah, and the stuff you see he done at Jaws, pretty ballsy
sick,
stuff.
yeah.
Really sick stuff. Really, I mean, yeah, stuff I would never do. I can tell you that much. Yeah.
I wish he kept that footage and put together a movie, like a full-fledged kind of flick, you know, instead of watching all this amazing footage on a little 5-inch screen or whatever, you know. But
yeah, that's
it is what it is.
Well, we've all got so much footage, and one thing in some ways, which is good also, but bad in the sense that when I was on tour, we didn't have Facebook and Instagram and phones with your camera on it. So so many things I talk to my kids about, you know, and friends. There's so much stuff that we don't have proof of or memories of, other than obviously in our heads and when we talk about it. So times like now is actually a lovely time to be able to talk about this stuff. And but you look at the kids nowadays, everything is documented on Facebook, Instagram, or even just on your phone. I mean, I have 45,000 pictures on my phone. God knows what they're of, you know. But over years and time, and in 20 years' time, we'll be able to go back and look at that information. Whereas now, you know, I know I did some pictures the other day with John Carter from Windsurf Mag, and we did some stuff on the current new Grip Ultra Mosquito edition and the old one from the 80s, you know. And he's like, God, I tell you what, you know, if you think, John, if we had phones in the day and digital stuff, we'd have pictures from this stuff years ago. Whereas now we just have to find a brochure that's lying around to see these old pictures, like the Superstar stuff that we just did. We just redid. We have to find the old brochures for it, because to find the actual little still slide is, you know, who knows where these things are. But so in some ways, that's a bit of a shame that we haven't got a catalogue, everybody, of all these different things that we've done and seen in our life, and to show our kids and for us to look at, I suppose. But mind you, on the flip side of that, at least we didn't sit 18 hours a day watching Facebook, you know, running our life into the ground.
Exactly, you know, and it has some sort of flavor to it, you know, when it's not on Instagram and it's not, you know, and watching VHS tapes as a kid and like you say, brochures and magazines, and these were amazing, you know. So I don't. I've still got boxes of them, of magazines, trophies, VHS videos. I've got so much of that stuff. And I've got some of my indoor sales, you know, my Sonic Hedgehog sales. I've got my indoor world title winning boards, 2 of them. My Aloha Classic winning boards, you know. So sick.
Like a lot of the guys, I've managed to keep a little bit of that stuff. So for the future.
Who's the most underrated windsurfer of all time?
God,
Underrated. I don't know, if I'm honest with you, because most people that are good have achieved something. I would say probably one of the most unachieved, and this sounds awful, I don't mean it this way, it sounds pretty bad because it sounds like he hasn't achieved, but for his talent, is probably Levi in my book. I think beautiful style, incredibly talented in all conditions, even pozo to hookeeper to wherever. I don't think he had whatever it is you need to compete and to be a world champion. I certainly think he had more than enough skill, certainly more than I had, to be world champion. It just didn't suit him. I don't think he wanted to leave Maui for as much time as it would have taken to compete against a lot of the guys that lived in pozo in those port tack conditions. It took quite a dedication for us coming from Europe. It wasn't such an issue when you leave Maui the whole time of your life, and it's more of a commitment, if you like. And I think maybe he wasn't as committed to that. He didn't feel he needed to or want to, whatever his reason is. But I think during my time, he was one guy. I mean, you could have said that nearly for Francisco, but he did win that one world title, which obviously, put him on that position in the map. But then straight after that, once he got away from MPG, maybe because he achieved his goal, I'm not sure, he went off the boil again, and it's a tiny bit. It's not 20%, it's 1 or 2 or 5% between winning a title or not.
Yeah.
It really is. And Levi just never found that couple of percent, whatever it may be, coupled possibly with a bit of luck maybe. But pretty much everyone else I can think of offhand won things or became something more. Obviously their talent or their skill gave them. I would say Levi's probably, and not to say he didn't achieve it, because he's achieved lots, of course, and he's an incredible sailor, and adorned around the world, with his style and stuff at hookeeper and things. But I think he could have maybe deserved to have been a world champion, or certainly won more contests and achieved more. That his talent, with the talent he had, that's for damn sure.
Yeah. Foil freestyle, yes or no? You seen any of that?
Foil freestyle, goddamn dangerous. Anything with a foil on the bottom, throwing it around. I mean, I'm foil winging quite a lot, and I have done since we brought it out. Duotone brought it out. Well, I had samples of it in February a couple of years ago, and prior to that. And I'm now starting to do all the jumps and the loops and things. And God, when that thing's flying around, it is pretty scary. But you see the guys, we've got our foil styler, and a few of the guys around here have been trying it and actually loving it. So yeah, I think there will be a place. I think all of the foils for all of our sports, kiting, windsurfing, supping, foiling, of course. I think it's kept our sports not alive, because they were alive, they were doing okay, but giving us another gear, if you like, another avenue for the guys on our sports to do, and to move and to enjoy in all the different conditions, not just windy conditions. So yeah, I think it will come. Freestyle as you see it today, normal freestyle, absolutely insane. Unfortunately for the end consumers, it's actually too insane. I don't know what the moves are. I couldn't tell you. One move that the guys can do with their eyes shut compared to a move that only 2 people can do nearly look the same to a layman, someone like myself who doesn't do freestyle anymore, and your end consumers buying the product on the street. They're not ever going to do any of these moves. And a lot of it is very difficult to understand. So in some ways it's too extreme, which means they lose an appeal a little bit to some of the guys. Waves is simple, jumps, how high and loops. Wave riding is simple in a way to look and visually. Racing, start and a finish line, and whatever happens in between, easy to follow. Freestyle is very difficult to follow, as much as it's incredible what they do. I mean, look at Goito, Jesus Christ, the guy is a legend. So yeah, I believe it will come in one way or another. Foiling definitely is here to stay. foil wing is a whole new sport for us. It's just growing like you would not believe. You thought windsurfing grew fast, kiting grew fast, nothing like this. Incredible. So yeah, all this stuff is out there, and you know what? I'm open for it all. Why not? Yeah, I don't have to do it. You know, I'm not going to be freestyle foiling. I might do a few jumps here and there, but I'm not be doing too much of that rad stuff at my age. But I don't have the passion for that, but I will be doing certain things. I'm doing the Rayleighs and Air 360s and whatnot, and wave riding and on the foil wing. I love it. Absolutely love it. Foil windsurfing, jumping and things. Yep, no problem. So yeah, there's a different level for different people. So I think it will come as it will in all the sports, and bring it on. Let's enjoy it. Enjoy it for what it is.
Obstacles in slalom, yes or no?
Oh, yes. I was talking about this the other day to someone. Can't remember who it was now. Someone. And actually, I think I had Jenna Gibson and Sarah and Tim and Simon Petrovic were at my house the other day. Some of my team riders here, slalom guys. And we were talking about the Supercross and wiping out on the other side of a slalom of a buoy, 1.1 meter buoy. Look at the first one we did. I can remember jumping, hitting the buoy on the way down, going over the bars in the lead, and all the rest of the guys having to jump the mark, you know, underneath the sail, scared silly. So yeah, the Supercross for me was by far and away the most fun slalom or racing discipline, by far. Absolutely incredible. Had all this, obviously you had speed, start line, so you need to be a bit technical, duck jives around the mark, spots on a 7.3 in the light winds is tricky, forward loops obviously on your big stuff as well, and obviously the obstacles. So man, that thing was insane. It's such a shame that it stopped, because everyone loved it that did it. Obviously the big race guys that were super fast couldn't do the freestyle moves, so they didn't want it. The freestyle guys, you know, the Bonaire sort of kids, the Venezuelan kids were shit hot at the freestyle stuff. I mean, they were doing forward loops and not even slowing down, and spots and things, that they couldn't get themselves to the start line in time. You know what I mean? So you had sort of the opposite end of the stick. So the guys like myself, the Pritchards, Swifty was really good. You know, we sort of excelled in that in a way, if you like. You know, we loved that. So a lot of the French windsurfers actually were good at it, because they sail in all sorts of conditions and stuff, and they're great wave sailors. And so yeah, I'd love to see that back. I'll tell you what, you've got to be fit for it, and that not just for the maneuvers, but because when you're going towards a jump and you see someone falling off, you're trying so hard not to laugh, your heart rate's going through the roof, you know. So by the time you hit the beach, you're all lying on the floor, literally at 200 heart rate, just because of all the stuff you're trying to recall in your brain. And yeah, I love that, to be honest with you. That was my
sounds like
thing.
So much fun. I really wish we're gonna do it. Okay, worst check-in story.
Worst what? Check-in
story. You got so many for sure.
So many. I mean, those days, I mean, I can remember, not a bad one, going to the Canaries with 26 boards for different disciplines. You know, I had new boards, old boards. I hadn't tested, and that's not just mast, booms, and sails as well on top. I think it was 32 pieces of luggage, bearing in mind 4 boards in a bag and whatever else. But in those days, we travelled on the holiday flights, you know, from the UK, and it cost me about 200 quid return. I mean, it was ridiculous. Took up half the airport. But flying out from places like Maui, from Italy, was a nightmare, because you couldn't get the charter flights. You'd be on Italian Airways or something like that, and it was always per kilo. So that was, you know, you might take, I don't know, 5 pieces, and it cost you $2,000 just to go on a 3-hour flight. But flying from Japan, flying from Maui, in the later days when they really cottoned onto it, because it took up so much of the plane. I mean, it's not surprising, really. We paid, you know, from $1,500 to $3,000 pretty much every time we got on an aeroplane on those long haul flights. Yeah. So not great. I mean, we also used to fly our motocross bikes in boom bags and board bags from Maui to LA to go motocross riding for a week and then back again. Pretty sure you weren't allowed to do that, but yeah, we used to take in the bits and put them in different bags. Yeah, so it's different in those days. Nowadays, yeah, you can't do that stuff. You just can't take the weight and the size, and it's really restricted.
Who was your worst competitor?
Worst is in hardest to compete against?
Yeah, like you see him on the draw and you actually get a reaction, which you probably wouldn't get much.
Well, racing, obviously, it was always beyond, of course. Waves, probably Jason. I would say Jason, because he was the only person I couldn't get in his mind. Okay, Robby I couldn't, Beyond you can't either, to be honest with you. It's a few of those guys. But yeah, Jason, I had some incredible heats against Jason because he was my best mate. We lived together for 15, 17 years, whatever it was, traveled together. And he's so, I mean, we'd go to the toilet and he'd want to have a wee quicker than I would, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. You know, it was literally 24/7 competing pretty much, but in a really lovely way. I mean, I never, that I can remember, he may do something different. I can't ever remember falling out with him over competing or you beat me, you did better than me, you got a difference, you know, never, ever. We were always thankful, you know, pleased for each other. But whenever I came up to Jason in a heat, for some reason, I just had to switch on another gear and try and go and do, you know, push myself that little bit further because it was bragging rights at home in a way and all the way home on an aeroplane or whatever. But, and, you know, we just lived for that competition, I suppose. And I enjoyed competing against him. And yeah, he probably beat me more than I did him, but I did beat him on quite a few occasions, which certainly, you know, kept me happy. And he never came in and went, you wanker, you beat me, or ever had a huff about it. And we never did that. In competition, we weren't that way. We were always disappointed in ourselves, maybe, or the result, but we were generally pretty happy for the other guys. It was, the camaraderie was genuinely, most people was, I would say, pretty damn good.
Yeah, we should definitely get JP on here. I've tried, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to sit through.
It'll be a long time for him. You may have to do it in a few different stints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, other than JP, who do you want to hear on the podcast?
God, who have you done that I haven't seen? Are they all been out so far?
Yeah, pretty much. Big names we done: Robby, Anders, Ricardo Brasinho, from the big names of the current thing.
Done Cowley?
Who?
Cowley?
Cowley, no, I just wrote him. It's not so easy to reach him, actually. It seems like
he's living the life, man. He's living the life. Good on him. Yeah. Swifty. You know, he's a underrated guy, which I didn't mention him actually before. Swifty's quite an underrated guy. We don't hear much about him. Works hard, does his thing, great sailor. Actually a good competitor too, generally. And he's done all sorts of things in his life. Maybe quite an interesting thing. You know, he's done pretty well. Learned some lessons. I've learned some lessons from, you know, he's a lot younger than me, from him and his dad, actually. The way him and his dad have dealt with things in their time, I've learned quite a lot from that, you know, which wouldn't be obvious to a lot of people. So yeah, he'd be quite interesting, I suppose. Who else? Have you done Mark Angulo? No. You've done Josh.
Done Josh.
Josh's, yeah.
Should get Mark on, definitely.
Mark, because he's so fun, man. Just to listen to him talk and the way he expresses himself. You know, I'd love to hear some more about the earlier days, you know, because he was before my time. And yeah, I just like, I think he'd be really entertaining to watch on here. That's for sure. He'd be very expressive. That's for sure. Yeah, definitely. Bjorn.
Yeah, Bjorn. I'm not sure. Like I mentioned, I saw him this summer. I mentioned to him, wasn't, you know, too stoked. I don't know. We'll try. Maybe with his son.
You know what? He does just love going windsurfing, doesn't he?
Exactly.
He just loved it. He's not fussed about the rest of it. He really isn't. You want a rock and roll lifestyle version, then you've got to have Robert Tuitiao.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, if he would tell you some of his stories, I think he'd be a pretty interesting guy.
God knows where he is, though, even. Does he live in Newcastle, Maui, Tahiti?
Maui, who knows? I mean, he's lived the life, that guy. And I can remember bit of advice he gave me. Unfortunately, it was probably 10 years too late. I can remember one day in my car outside Maui's house, or the Nil Pride shop it is, I think now, or was, in Kahului. He just bought another big truck with 4 wheels on the back to tow his 100-foot cigarette boat in New Caledonia, and he was going to ship it. And I just remember, I'm just like, Robert, what are you doing, man? Why are you buying another truck? And he goes, look, he says, I spend my money on my toys. He said, but I only spend 50%. He said, if you invest 50%, you could set fire to the other 50%, doesn't matter. He said, just don't spend 100% on toys. I went, shit, man, you told me too late. Yeah, so I wish I had more of that advice when I was younger, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, he'd be a rock and roll man, that boy. He's done some stuff through Paris and Europe, and he worked hard and he played very hard, that's for sure. So I'd like to hear Robby's story.
Yeah, that's a great way to end it. Thank you, Nik. Thanks so much for the
my
insight.
pleasure. I'm sure I've forgotten a lot of people and lots of things I haven't mentioned and stuff, and things will come to mind that I should have said that. But I really appreciate you taking your time. I know I talk a lot. The guys at Baltimore always say, "Go on, Nik, you do your talking. You talk a lot." So if I've waffled on, excuse me. Might have to cut some of it out. But my pleasure. And I look forward to seeing some more of these guys on your channel doing a good job.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So there we go, another interesting podcast. Nik Baker, he's got some stories and some great insight there. If you liked it, give us a like. We like to get 1,000 likes every episode. It's only just started happening, and that's thanks to you guys. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, you should subscribe, because we have a new podcast every Wednesday. And if you subscribed, you'll get a notification to tell you it's on. You won't miss one. And there's some beauties. Remember, if you don't want to watch them on YouTube and you didn't know, they're available on Spotify and iTunes. So it's all good. And if you want to become a total legend and a member of Windsurfing.TV and help fund the channel, you have to chip in some beer money. The link is below. Be a legend, support the channel. I think it's going pretty well at the moment. The feedback's good, so if you're enjoying stuff, it's always welcome. I'll stick links to other podcasts up there in case this is the first one you've watched. There is some beauties, so stay tuned to the channel for more videos.